I got fired for job hunting on my lunch break. 10 months later, I owned the building my boss used to rent. This is the story of how rock bottom became my launch pad. Have you ever had one of those moments where your entire life pivots on something so ordinary, so mundane, that you almost miss it happening? I'm Melanie Jo Carter, and mine happened on a Tuesday during my lunch break at Maple and Main Marketing in Fairgrove, a town so small that everyone knows your business before you do. I was doing what millions of people do every day, scrolling through job listings while eating a sad desk salad. The office Wi-Fi was faster than my home internet, and honestly, after 3 years of watching this place slowly hemorrhage employees, 12 people gone in 6 months, I figured it was time to explore my options. What I didn't know was that Trent, my increasingly desperate boss, had been monitoring our network activity ever since the company started bleeding money. Uncle Jerry had warned me months ago that small businesses were struggling, but I hadn't realized how bad things had gotten here. The tap on my shoulder came at exactly 12:47 p.m. "Melanie, we need to talk." His voice had that particular tone, the one that makes your stomach drop and your palms sweat. I minimized the Indeed tab, but something in his smirk told me it was already too late. But this wasn't just about a job search. What happened next would lead me down a path I never saw coming. "You violated our network security protocol," Trent announced, standing over my desk like a judge delivering a death sentence. But I could see the sweat on his forehead, the way his hands shook slightly. This wasn't about protocol, this was about desperation. "I was looking at job sites during my lunch break," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "On my personal time. Company network, company rules. And frankly, Melanie, with our current financial situation, we can't afford employees who aren't fully committed." His voice cracked slightly on financial situation. I'd heard the rumors, lost clients, unpaid invoices, Trent taking out a second mortgage on his house. The company was dying, and he was looking for someone to blame. I just happened to give him the perfect excuse. "Consider this your official termination. We're restructuring operations, and your position has been eliminated." The office went silent. 23 pairs of eyes watching my humiliation unfold in real time. My face burned with embarrassment and rage, but I held it together because that's what good Southern girls do, we swallow our pride and smile. I packed my desk in silence, each item feeling heavier than the last. But as I walked toward the exit, I remembered something Uncle Jerry had mentioned about this building during our last phone call. Something about the lease terms being unusual. As I carried my pathetic cardboard box toward the door, I caught a glimpse of something I'd never noticed before, a small placard by the reception desk that read, "Building property of Fairgrove Municipal Trust, current leaseholder, Maple and Main Marketing." Leaseholder. Not owner. It was such a tiny detail, but it stuck in my mind like a splinter. Why had I never noticed that before? And why did it suddenly feel important? The walk to my car felt like a funeral march. 3 years of my life reduced to a box of personal belongings and a severance check that wouldn't cover 2 weeks of expenses. The worst part? I genuinely thought I'd done good work here. Apparently, loyalty meant nothing when budget cuts came calling. Sitting in my Honda Civic in the parking lot, I stared back at the beautiful 3-story brick building that had housed my career dreams. Built in 1923, it had character. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, and those gorgeous arched windows that caught the afternoon light just right. For a moment, I imagined what it would be like to own a place like that. To be the one making the decisions, setting the rules. Then I laughed at myself and drove home to figure out how to explain to my landlord that rent might be late. If only I knew what phone call was coming. 3 weeks into unemployment, surviving on ramen and the last dregs of my savings account, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months. Uncle Jerry, my dad's eccentric brother who'd always marched to his own drummer. "Mel, honey, you still living in that postage stamp town?" His gravelly voice carried that familiar hint of mischief that had gotten us both in trouble during family reunions. Unfortunately, yes. Why? Well, I got some news that might interest you. You know anything about property auctions? I almost laughed. Jerry, I can barely afford groceries right now. Why would I know about property auctions? Because sometimes the universe has a funny way of putting opportunities right under our noses. Tell me, what do you know about the building where you used to work? My heart skipped. What do you mean? I mean, I've been doing some digging, and that pretty little brick building of yours? It's about to go up for auction. Tax lien sale. Seems the municipal trust got themselves into some legal trouble. I sat down hard on my couch. Jerry, what are you talking about? His chuckle was low and knowing. Pack a bag, honey. We're going hunting. But he hadn't told me the most shocking part yet. The starting bid is $430,000, Jerry said, his words hitting me like a freight train. For a building that's worth at least 10 times that. I nearly dropped the phone. Jerry, that's impossible. Buildings don't sell for that little unless something's seriously wrong. Oh, something's wrong all right. The municipal trust has been tied up in a legal mess for 2 years, unpaid taxes, ownership disputes, and a whole lot of bureaucratic nonsense. Plus, there's some environmental concerns about old heating oil tanks in the basement, and the county can't do full inspections until after the sale. My mind was racing. What kind of environmental concerns? Nothing catastrophic, but enough to scare off most investors. Could be a $50,000 cleanup, could be nothing. The county wants their money fast, so they're selling as is with limited inspection rights. The risk was real, but so was the opportunity. Even if this is legitimate, Jerry, I don't have that kind of money. I just got fired, remember? That's where things get interesting. I've been sitting on money from selling my restaurant equipment business, but I also found something else. There's a rural revitalization grant program, but the application process is brutal. Background checks, business plan requirements, community impact assessments. What are you suggesting? Partnership. My money, your determination, and both our willingness to bet on ourselves. But there's something else you need to know first. What, Jerry? The auction's in 5 days. And we're not the only ones who figured this out. 5 days to decide whether to risk everything on a building that had just witnessed my professional downfall. It sounded insane, but something deep in my gut told me this was exactly the kind of insane I needed. Jerry drove down from Louisville that weekend, and we spent hours walking around the building, taking photos, and researching everything we could find. The property records told a fascinating story. The building had been in the municipal trust for decades, generating steady rental income until a corruption scandal 2 years ago left everything in legal limbo. Look at those bones, Jerry said, running his hand along the original brickwork. They don't make them like this anymore. High ceilings, thick walls, perfect natural light. This place is begging to be transformed. I found myself seeing it through new eyes. Instead of the corporate prison where I'd felt trapped, I saw potential. The main floor could be something completely different, maybe a co-working space or event venue. The upper floors were already divided into offices, perfect for small businesses or freelancers. But Jerry, what if we're wrong? What if there's something we don't know? Honey, every good investment is a calculated risk. The question is, are you ready to bet on yourself? As we stood there in the fading afternoon light, I made a decision that would either be the smartest or stupidest thing I'd ever done. But first, I needed to make one phone call. That phone call was to Callie Mae Turner, the best interior designer in 3 counties and someone who'd know exactly what we were looking at. Callie Mae had transformed half the businesses in Fairgrove, and if anyone could tell us whether this building was a diamond or a disaster, it was her. Mel, honey, "Are you out of your ever-loving mind?" was her immediate response when I explained our plan. "Probably," I admitted. "But I need someone who understands buildings to tell me if I'm crazy or brilliant." Callie Mae met us the next morning with a contractor friend and a legal pad full of questions. For 3 hours, we crawled through every inch of that building, checking electrical systems, examining the roof, testing the plumbing, and measuring spaces. "The good news," she finally announced, "is that this place is solid as a rock. Original hardwood floors under that terrible carpet, beautiful crown molding, and the HVAC system was updated 5 years ago." "And the bad news?" "It needs about $50,000 in cosmetic work to be rentable, and maybe another $25,000 for the kind of renovations that would make it special." Jerry was scribbling numbers on his phone calculator. "So we're looking at about $500,000 total investment for a building that could appraise for what?" Callie Mae grinned. "In this market? With the right tenant mix? Easy $2 million. Maybe more." The math was starting to make sense, but there was still one massive problem. "We're not the only ones who figured this out," Jerry announced grimly after spending the morning at the county courthouse. "There are at least 3 other bidders registered for the auction." My heart sank. "Who?" "A local developer named Patterson who's been buying up downtown properties, some out-of-state investment group, and..." He paused dramatically. "Trent Pritchard." I felt like I'd been slapped. "You're kidding me. Apparently your former boss has been planning this for months." I did some digging. He's been struggling to pay his current lease, behind on rent for 2 months. His mortgage broker told me confidentially that he's leveraged everything, including his house, trying to keep the business afloat. The pieces clicked together. That's why he's been so desperate lately. He's not just trying to cut costs, he's fighting for survival. Exactly. And owning this building instead of leasing would cut his overhead by 60%. Plus, he could sublet the other floors to generate income. It's not just about expansion, it's about keeping his business alive. The irony was suffocating. Trent fires me as part of his cost-cutting desperation, then tries to buy the building to save his failing company. The man was playing chess while I thought we were playing checkers. "This changes everything," I said, pacing around Jerry's hotel room. "If Trent gets that building, he'll have the financial breathing room to rebuild while everyone else gets evicted." Jerry was quiet for a long moment, then smiled that dangerous smile I remembered from childhood. "Or," he said slowly, "it gives us exactly the motivation we need to win." But he still hadn't told me about the real challenge we were facing. "The minimum bid might be $430, but these auctions can get competitive fast," Jerry explained, showing me printouts from similar sales. "We need to be prepared to go higher." I stared at the numbers, feeling overwhelmed. "How much higher?" "Patterson's been bragging around town that he's got $600,000 in cash ready to go. The investment group probably has even more." "And Trent?" Jerry shrugged. "Who knows what kind of financing he's lined up." This was starting to feel impossible. Even with Jerry's nest egg in my cashed-out 401k, we were looking at maybe $550,000 total. If the bidding went much higher than that, we'd be out. "There's got to be something we're missing," I muttered, poring over the auction documentation for the 100th time. "Some angle that gives us an advantage." That's when I noticed something buried in the fine print, a small notation about qualified small business applicants and something called the Rural Revitalization Grant Program. "Jerry, look at this." I pointed to the paragraph. It says qualified applicants might be eligible for additional funding assistance. We spent the rest of the day on the phone with bureaucrats and grant administrators, following a paper trail that led to an incredible discovery. As a recently unemployed woman starting a business in an economically disadvantaged area, I qualified for up to $100,000 in low-interest loans and grants. Suddenly, our budget had increased dramatically. But we still had one more hurdle. Hey lovely readers, if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who loves a good underdog story. Your support means everything. Now, back to the drama. The morning of the auction, I woke up at 4 a.m. with my stomach in knots. Jerry and I had spent the week finalizing our financing, getting pre-approval for the grant money, and developing our bidding strategy. We had a maximum budget of $650,000, enough to compete, but not enough to get reckless. Remember, Jerry said over coffee, this isn't emotional. It's business. We bid smart, we bid strategically, and if it goes too high, we walk away. Easy for him to say. For me, this felt like everything, my future, my dignity, my chance to prove that getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. The auction was held on the courthouse steps at 10 a.m., and by 9:30, a crowd had gathered. I spotted Trent immediately, wearing an expensive suit and talking animatedly on his phone. He looked confident, which made me nervous. Patterson was there too, along with a woman in business attire who I assumed represented the out-of-state investment group. About 20 other people had shown up to watch, including several local business owners and what looked like reporters from the county newspaper. Mel, Jerry whispered, don't look now, but Trent just spotted you. I couldn't help myself. I turned and made direct eye contact with my former boss. His expression shifted from confidence to confusion to something that looked almost like panic. He definitely hadn't expected to see me here. But what happened next shocked everyone. The auctioneer, a fast-talking man named Bobby Fletcher, called the crowd to order at exactly 10 a.m. We're here today to auction the property known as 412 Main Street, Fairgrove. Minimum bid is $430,000. Do I hear 430? 3 hands shot up immediately, Patterson, the investment group representative, and to my surprise, someone I hadn't noticed before, a young man in a baseball cap who looked like he might be representing another local family. 440. Called Patterson. 450, countered the investment group. 460. This from baseball cap guy. The bidding was moving fast, faster than I'd expected. Jerry and I had spent yesterday securing a backup bridge loan from his business banker, just enough to cover any gap if we needed to bid higher than our available cash. It was expensive money, but it gave us confidence. Then Trent raised his hand. 500,000. A hush fell over the crowd. It was a significant jump, clearly intended to scare off the smaller bidders. Baseball cap guy shook his head and stepped back. The investment group representative looked uncomfortable. Patterson hesitated for just a moment, then called out, 525. 550, Trent responded immediately, his voice tight with desperation. Jerry grabbed my arm. This is it, he whispered. You ready? I took a deep breath, knowing our backup financing was in place, and raised my hand. 600,000. Every head in the crowd turned to stare at me, including Trent's. His face had gone completely white. But the real surprise was just beginning. 600,000 from the young lady in the blue jacket, the auctioneer announced. Do I hear 625? I watched Trent's face drain of color, his hand trembling as he raised it. 625. Patterson jumped back in. 650. This was it, our maximum budget. If it went higher, we were done. I looked at Jerry, and he nodded grimly, remembering our backup financing. 700,000, I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Patterson's shoulders slump in defeat. The investment group representative was frantically whispering into her phone. Trent's hand started to rise, then stopped completely. He'd reached his limit. 700,000, repeated the auctioneer. Do I hear 725? Trent stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, part shock, part anger, and something that looked almost like recognition. He was seeing me differently now, not as the employee he could dismiss, but as a real competitor. Going once. The investment group woman shook her head. Going twice. Patterson was already walking away. Sold. To the young lady in the blue jacket for $700,000. Jerry was hugging me, and I realized I'd just committed to spending $50,000 more than we actually had. How exactly was I going to pull this off? Jerry, I whispered urgently as we walked back to his truck, we just bid $50,000 more than our budget. I know, he said calmly. How are we going to cover the difference? We'll make it work. That's what entrepreneurs do, they adapt and execute. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal paperwork, inspections, and financing arrangements. The county required a 30-day closing period for tax lien auctions, which gave us breathing room to finalize our funding sources and complete due diligence on the building's condition. During those crucial weeks, we discovered that the grant money would cover more than I'd initially hoped, and Jerry's bridge loan terms were more favorable than expected. We still needed additional funds, but the gap was manageable. That's when Jerry made a suggestion that both terrified and excited me. What if we brought in another partner? Who? Callie Mae. She's already invested in this project emotionally, she knows the building inside and out, and she's got skills we desperately need. It made sense, but it also meant giving up some control. On the other hand, Callie Mae's expertise and local connections could be exactly what we needed to make this work. I called her that evening, expecting to have to convince her. Instead, she surprised me. Honey, I've been thinking about this all week. Count me in. But she had conditions that would change everything. I'll put in $50,000 cash, Callie Mae announced over dinner at her house, but I want a full third partnership, not just contractor fees. Jerry and I exchanged glances. It was more than we needed financially, but it also meant giving up significant control of the project. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Equal partnership. 3 ways. I handle all the renovation. And design work at cost, plus I bring my contractor network and local business connections. You two handle the financing and day-to-day management. The more we talked, the more sense it made. Callie Mae knew everyone in town, had relationships with all the best contractors, and understood the local market better than Jerry and I ever could. There's something else, she added with a mischievous grin. I've already been talking to potential tenants. You what? Honey, I've been in this business for 15 years. The minute I saw that building, I started thinking about who might want to rent space there. I've got a coffee roaster who's been looking for a retail location, a yoga instructor who needs studio space, and 3 different freelancers who are dying for professional office space that doesn't cost a fortune. Jerry was nodding enthusiastically. That's the kind of market intelligence you can't buy. By the end of the evening, we had a deal. 3 equal partners, with Callie Mae handling renovations and tenant relations, Jerry managing finances and contracts, and me overseeing the overall vision and daily operations. It felt right, but there was still one major obstacle we hadn't discussed. Walking through our newly purchased building the next week, the magnitude of what we'd taken on hit me like a brick wall. What had looked like cosmetic updates from the outside felt overwhelming when you were standing inside with a contractor's checklist. The carpets got to go everywhere, Callie Mae's contractor friend, Jimmy 2 times, announced. Don't ask about the nickname. And this drop ceiling is hiding some beautiful original details, but it's also hiding some electrical work that's not up to code. Every room revealed new challenges. The upstairs bathrooms needed complete overhauls. The main floor had gorgeous hardwood under the carpet, but it would need refinishing. The building's character was definitely there, but accessing it was going to cost more than we'd budgeted. How much more? Jerry asked the question we were all thinking. At least another $30,000 for the basics, Jimmy replied. Maybe $50 if you want to do it right. I felt that familiar panic rising in my chest. We were already stretching our budget to the breaking point, and now we needed even more money just to make the space rentable. That's when Callie Mae made a suggestion that was either brilliant or completely insane. What if we did it in phases? What do you mean? I mean, what if we focus on getting one floor perfect and rent ready, then use that income to fund the next phase? It was risky, but it was also smart. Instead of trying to renovate everything at once, we could generate revenue early and reinvest it back into the project. But which floor should we focus on first? After hours of debate, we decided to start with the main floor. It had the best street visibility, the most character with its high ceilings and large windows, and the greatest potential for attracting the kind of tenants who would pay premium rent. We turned this into a showcase, I explained to Jerry and Callie Mae. Something so impressive that people will pay waiting list money for the upstairs spaces. The vision was coming together, a co-working space that didn't feel corporate or sterile, but warm and creative. Exposed brick, refinished hardwood floors, modern lighting mixed with vintage touches, and flexible spaces that could host everything from business meetings to community events. Callie Mae was in her element, sketching layouts and sourcing materials. I know a guy who's got reclaimed wood from an old tobacco barn, she said excitedly. And my sister's restaurant is renovating, so they're getting rid of some beautiful industrial light fixtures. The work began in earnest. 12-hour days of demolition, painting, electrical work, and what felt like endless decisions about everything from paint colors to bathroom fixtures. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. and fall into bed exhausted at midnight, covered in dust and proud of every aching muscle. But 3 weeks into the renovation, we got news that shook everything. Trent Pritchard's lease was expiring early, and he was moving Maple and Main marketing out of the building immediately. Which meant we just lost our biggest potential tenant before we'd even opened. He's doing this on purpose, I fumed, pacing around our partially demolished main floor. He wants to see us fail. Jerry was reading Trent's email for the third time. Maybe, but it doesn't matter why. What matters is that we just lost 60% of our projected first-year revenue. The math was brutal. We'd been counting on Maple and Main renewing their lease at market rates, which would have covered most of our monthly expenses while we built up other tenants. Without that anchor tenant, we were looking at potentially months of negative cash flow. Callie Mae, ever the optimist, saw opportunity where Jerry and I saw disaster. You know what this means? It means we get to design this space exactly how we want it, without having to work around an existing tenant. Callie Mae, we need paying customers, not design freedom. Honey, trust me on this. I've already got 3 businesses ready to sign leases the minute we're ready. And with Trent gone, we can market this as a completely fresh start, new management, new vision, new energy. She was right, but it didn't make the financial pressure any less intense. We had maybe 2 months of operating capital before we'd be in serious trouble. That's when I decided to do something that scared me more than buying the building in the first place. I was going to put myself out there and tell our story. You want to do what? Jerry looked at me like I'd suggested setting the building on fire. I want to document this whole process. Social media, local newspaper, maybe even reach out to some business podcasts. Turn our story into our marketing strategy. It was a risky move. If we failed, our failure would be very public. But if we succeeded, the publicity could be invaluable for attracting tenants and building community support. Callie Mae loved the idea immediately. Honey, people love an underdog story. Woman gets fired, buys the building, transforms it into something amazing. That's the kind of story that gets shared. We started simple, a Facebook page called The Nest. From empty to extraordinary, where I posted daily updates about the renovation progress. Photos of Callie Mae covered in paint, videos of Jimmy 2 times explaining why we needed to rewire the entire second floor, time-lapse footage of the main floor transformation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Local people I'd never met were stopping by to check on our progress. The county newspaper wanted to do a feature story. But then we hit our first major roadblock. The City Planning Commission announced they were reviewing downtown zoning regulations. Rumor had it that some city council members wanted to restrict mixed-use developments, which could potentially shut down our co-working concept before we even opened. If the zoning changed, we'd be stuck with a beautiful building we couldn't use as planned. Was our entire vision about to be derailed by small-town politics? The interview with Business Today magazine was scheduled for the following week, right in the middle of our most intensive renovation phase. I was terrified and excited in equal measure. Just be yourself, Callie Mae advised, helping me pick out an outfit that said, "Successful Entrepreneur," without trying too hard. Tell them the truth about why you're doing this and what you hope to accomplish. The reporter, a sharp woman named Margot Willows, met me at the building on a Tuesday morning. She spent 2 hours talking to me, Jerry, and Callie Mae, taking photos of the renovation in progress and asking surprisingly insightful questions about the business model. "What do you say to people who think this is just a revenge plot against your former boss?" she asked. I'd been dreading this question, but I was ready for it. I'd say that the best revenge is building something meaningful. This isn't about Trent Pritchard. It's about creating opportunities for other people and revitalizing our community. 2 weeks later, the article hit newsstands and went viral online. Fired for job hunting, she bought the building, was shared thousands of times across social media platforms. The publicity was incredible, but it came with unexpected consequences. Suddenly, we had reporters calling daily, potential tenants reaching out from 3 states away, and enough attention to make even a small-town girl nervous. But the biggest surprise was the phone call that came the day after the article was published. "Ms. Carter? This is Patricia Holmes from Midwest Property Development. I read about your project in Business Today, and I'd like to discuss a potential investment opportunity." I nearly dropped the phone. Midwest Property Development was one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the region. What could they possibly want with our little building? "We specialize in identifying emerging markets and promising entrepreneurial ventures," Patricia continued. "Your project fits perfectly with our rural revitalization initiative. Would you be interested in discussing a partnership?" Part of me was flattered, but another part was immediately suspicious. What kind of partnership? We'd provide additional capital for expansion, professional property management services, and access to our tenant network. In exchange, we'd take a minority stake in the property and a percentage of the profits. It sounded too good to be true, which in my experience usually meant it was. Jerry and Callie Mae were equally skeptical when I told them about the call. "They want to come in after we've done all the hard work and taken all the risk," Jerry pointed out. Classic vulture behavior. But Patricia Holmes was persistent. She flew down from Chicago the following week with a formal proposal that was both impressive and terrifying. They were offering enough money to fully renovate the entire building, plus working capital for the first year of operations. "I admire your passion, Melanie," she said over dinner. "But passion doesn't scale. Profit does." The catch? They wanted a 40% stake in the property and significant control over tenant selection and lease terms. It was a decision that could either secure our future or cost us everything we'd worked for. 40% is too much, I told Patricia Holmes over coffee at Fairgrove's only decent cafe. "We've put our own money, time, and reputation into this project. We're not interested in giving up control." "I understand your position," she replied smoothly, "but consider what we're offering. Full renovation funding, professional management, and access to national retail chains that could anchor your tenant mix." That's when she dropped the real bombshell. "We'd want to bring in a Starbucks for the main floor, convert the upper floors to standardized office suites, and implement our proven property management systems." My stomach dropped. "You want to turn this into another generic corporate space?" We want to maximize profitability and minimize risk. Small local businesses are unpredictable. National chains provide stable, long-term income. Jerry, Callie Mae, and I spent 3 sleepless nights debating the offer. The money was tempting, especially with the zoning uncertainty hanging over us. But Patricia's vision would destroy everything we'd worked for: the community focus, the support for local entrepreneurs, the character that made this place special. What if we countered? Callie Mae suggested. Keep majority control but offer them a smaller stake and a consulting role? We came back with a counterproposal: 25% stake, no operational control, and a clause requiring unanimous partner approval for major tenant decisions. Patricia Holmes's response was swift and definitive: 25% doesn't provide adequate return on our investment. Our original offer stands. So we did something that either took incredible courage or incredible stupidity. We turned them down. But our decision was about to be put to the ultimate test. 3 days before our planned grand opening, disaster struck. A routine inspection revealed that our electrical work wasn't up to code in several areas, and the city was threatening to delay our occupancy permit. How much to fix it? I asked Jimmy 2 times, though I was afraid to hear the answer. $15,000, minimum. Maybe 20. And it'll take at least a week. We didn't have $15,000 in reserve, and we definitely couldn't afford to delay opening. All of our potential tenants were counting on moving in the following week. If we had to postpone, we might lose them entirely. That evening, staring at our nearly completed but legally unoccupiable building, I made a strategic decision. Instead of just asking for help, I crafted a social media campaign that positioned this as an opportunity for the community to invest in their own economic future. Here's the deal, I posted online, and at the emergency city council meeting I demanded. The nest represents 20 local jobs, 15 small businesses, and proof that Fairgrove can attract young entrepreneurs. This electrical issue threatens all of that. I offered concrete value in return. The electricians who helped would get free co-working memberships, businesses that contributed would get first dibs on event space, and everyone would be listed as founding community partners. The response was immediate. 2 electrical contractors offered to work at cost in exchange for ongoing maintenance contracts. Local businesses contributed materials. And the mayor himself called the inspector to fast-track our re-inspection. Within 48 hours, we had the work completed and our permits approved. But the real surprise came on opening day. Saturday morning, October 15th, dawned crisp and bright, perfect weather for our grand opening celebration. We'd planned for maybe 50 people to show up for coffee, tours, and the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Instead, nearly 300 people crowded Main Street. Local TV news crews were there, along with reporters from regional newspapers and business magazines. The mayor gave a speech about entrepreneurship and community revitalization. A high school marching band played while people toured our beautifully renovated space. The nest was everything we dreamed it could be. The main floor buzzed with energy as potential tenants explored the co-working areas, meeting rooms, and event space. Callie Mae had outdone herself with the design. It felt both professional and welcoming, modern and rooted in local character. By the end of the day, we'd signed lease agreements with 5 different tenants, filled our co-working memberships for the first month, and booked 3 corporate events. But the most satisfying moment came when I spotted a familiar figure standing across the street, watching our celebration from a distance. Trent had come to see what we'd built with the space he'd abandoned. Our eyes met across the crowd, and for just a moment, I saw something in his expression that looked almost like regret. Then he turned and walked away, and I realized I felt nothing but pity for him. This story was never really about him anyway. Monday morning, exactly 1 week after our grand opening, I was in my new office reviewing lease agreements when our receptionist buzzed me. "Melanie? There's someone here to see you. Says his name is Trent Pritchard." My heart skipped a beat. What could he possibly want now? Trent walked into my office looking decidedly uncomfortable. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked almost humble. Nice place, he said, glancing around at the exposed brick walls and vintage light fixtures. Really nice. Thank you, I replied carefully. What can I do for you? He took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize. The way I fired you was unprofessional and unfair. You were a good employee, and I let my own stress about the business affect my judgment. I was speechless. This was the last thing I'd expected. I also wanted to ask. He paused, looking genuinely nervous. My lease on the new space fell through, and I'm looking for temporary office space for my team. I know it's awkward, but I wondered if you might have something available. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. My former boss, who had fired me for looking for other jobs, was now asking to rent office space from me. How temporary? I asked. Maybe 6 months, while I figure out a more permanent solution. I looked at him for a long moment, thinking about all the anger and hurt I'd carried since that day he fired me. Then I thought about the woman I'd become in the months since, stronger, more confident, and definitely more successful than I'd ever been working for him. I'll have Callie May show you what's available, I said finally. Market rates, standard lease terms. His relief was visible. Thank you, Melanie. Really. As he left, I realized that the best revenge really was living well. Here I am, exactly 10 months after getting fired for job hunting on office Wi-Fi, sitting in my office in a building I own, watching the morning sun stream through those beautiful arched windows I used to admire as an employee. But this morning is different. A young woman named Ashley sits across from my desk, recently laid off from her marketing job in Louisville, driving down to Fairgrove because she heard about this woman who turned getting fired into owning a building. I don't know where to start, she says, and I see myself in her uncertainty. Start with being honest about what you want, I tell her. Not what you think you should want, but what would make you excited to wake up every morning. The nest is thriving beyond our wildest dreams. We're at 95% occupancy, with a waiting list for co-working memberships. The building was recently appraised at $2.4 million, more than triple what we paid for it. Jerry, Callie May, and I make a good team, each bringing our unique strengths to something bigger than any of us could have built alone. And yes, Trent Pritchard is still renting space from us. His lease renewal negotiations were surprisingly cordial. His business survived, but he's a different man, humbler, more thoughtful. Sometimes failure teaches better lessons than success. After Ashley leaves, I walk over to that same parking lot where I sat crying in my Honda 10 months ago. The difference isn't just the building or the business, it's who I became when I stopped waiting for permission to create the life I wanted. Sometimes getting fired is the universe's way of setting you free. If this story inspired you to take a leap of faith in your own life, I'd love to hear about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Because the best adventures always start with a single brave decision.